Hello, it's Friday, May 19th, 2017. You are listening to Inception Radio Network, voice of the fringe majority. This is Carol Carl with ufo-headline-news. Tonight, let's gather our paraphernalia and go out and look for a constellation that's easy to see on the sky's dome, if your sky is dark enough. Corona Borealis, a.k.a. the Northern Crown, is exciting to find. It's an almost perfect semicircle of stars. You'll find this beautiful pattern in the evening sky from now until October. The constellation Corona Borealis is located more or less along a line between two bright stars, Arcturus in the constellation Bootes the Herdsman, and Vega in the constellation Lyra the Harp. At nightfall and early evening, you can see Arcturus fairly high, the east to northeast sky, noticeable for its brightness and that yellow-orange color. Vega will be rather low in the northeast, bright and blue-white in color. The Northern Crown is more or less between these two bright stars. It's going to be a semicircle of stars, very noticeable provided the sky's dark enough. The brightest star in Corona Borealis is Alphecca. We'll spell that A-L-P-H-E-C-C-A, also known as Gemma, G-E-M-M-A, sometimes called the Pearl of the Crown. The name Alphecca originated with a description of Corona Borealis as the broken one, in reference to the fact that these stars appear in a semicircle rather than a full circle. Alphecca is a blue-white star with an intrinsic luminosity some 60 times that of our Sun. It's located about 75 light-years from Earth. Bottom line, you'll need a fairly dark sky to see Corona Borealis between those two brilliant stars, Vega and Arcturus. Corona Borealis, the Northern Crown. Cool. Try this on for cool. Headline, NASA just discovered a bizarre bubble around Earth, and humans accidentally created it. Mike Weiner writes this for bgrnews.com. Most of the time, NASA spends its days searching for and studying things in space that resulted from natural phenomena, like creepy valleys on Mars. Yeah, we talked about Perseverance Valley on Mars just yesterday here on UFO Headline News. Also, things like vast oceans on Europa. But its newest discovery is quite different. In a new paper published in Space Science Reviews, researchers reveal the existence of a man-made bubble created by a specific type of radio communication technology. However, unlike most of the things humans have accidentally created on Earth, this particular shield could actually prove to be beneficial, as long as we know how to control it. This bubble, which humanity has created without even realizing it, was VLF, in other words, very low-frequency radio communications. These types of signals have a long history and were once used for long-range radio communication. Today, they're used largely in communicating with submarines, but the signals find their way into space as well, and when they do so, researchers realize that they have the power to affect the radiation bombarding Earth from space by creating a sort of shield that repels it. Quote, a number of experiments and observations have figured out that, under the right conditions, radio communication signals in the VLF frequency range can in fact affect the properties of the high-energy radiation environment around the Earth, end quotes. That's from Phil Erickson. He's an assistant director at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's Haystack Observatory. What's particularly interesting is that now that NASA knows that VLF signals have this power, they could be used to shield astronauts, satellites from spikes in radiation arriving to Earth from the Sun. Hooray for happy accidents. To that we add Viva Serendipity. Here's an update. At least 2 years ago, although it hardly seems that long, there was information and a big case carried by mainstream media as well. It was the death of Jeffrey Allen Lash in the Los Angeles, California area. Jeffrey, who was known to have told people he was a hybrid alien, working with a 3-letter agency in the United States government, and that on the event of his death or anything seriously wrong with him, his body would be taken care of by said agency. It wasn't. It was found in a van by the Los Angeles Police Department after some calls, and to make a long story short, in his condominium was found at least $20,000 in cash, an arsenal that the Los Angeles Police Department found jaw-dropping. There was indication he had several storage areas filled with various kinds of cars, one of them capable of driving underwater. And when queried upon this, Jeffrey Allen Lash would tell people that was because he worked with agents who, at the drop of a hat, might have an urgent need for such a vehicle. Enter Jack Brewer. He's a journalist and a ufologist who's been following this and making requests to the Department of Justice, FOIA-wise. Here's an update dated May 11th about this FOIA information appeal. Here we go. Department of Justice responds to Freedom of Information Act appeal, directs FBI to search further for Lash files. A May 10th email from the Department of Justice stated Jack Brewer's appeal for files on Jeffrey Allen Lash, quote, has been processed with the following final deposition. Completely reversed/remanded, end quotes. This email was from the Department of Justice Office of Information Policy, and addressed an appeal filed due to the FBI previously reporting requested records were unable to be identified. And here is Jack Brewer's summary of the Jeffrey Allen Lash case. Again, the story of a man found dead in a vehicle in the Los Angeles upscale community of Pacific Palisades. The bizarre saga involved a stash of millions of dollars in weapons and ammo, about $250,000 in cash, and testimonies that the deceased had claimed to be an ET human hybrid working with United States intelligence agencies, among other odd plot twists. Apparently, this post by Jack Brewer has been favorited constantly, in spite of it having been posted 2 years ago. Jack Brewer's request to the FBI for records on the Lash case was filed in 2016. He was subsequently informed by the Bureau in a letter dated December 15, 2016, that records were unable to be identified. But it was added that the, quote, response neither confirms nor denies the existence of your subject's name on any watch lists, end quotes. It was also clarified to be a standard notification and, quote, should not be taken as an indication that excluded records do or do not exist, end quotes. The letter further stated, quote, if you have additional information pertaining to the subject that you believe was of investigative interest to the Bureau, please provide us the details and we will conduct an additional search, end quotes. The article continues, in Jack Brewer's own words, quote, I therefore pointed out that The Guardian, in an article dated 23rd of July 2015, reported the late Mr. Lash believed he was, quote, a secret government operative under constant surveillance by the CIA, the FBI, or both, end quotes. And then there's a link to that article. Jack Brewer also pointed out to them that similarly the Washington Times covered the story, reporting that Lash identified himself to his neighbors as Bob Smith. There's a link to that article as well. The Los Angeles Times, many other media outlets reported similar circumstances. Files available for release are therefore requested on any investigations the Bureau may have conducted of Jeffrey Allen Lash, as well as any interest in or relationships with Ash. That's the summation of Jack Brewer's latest hit on the agencies involved. He closes this article by writing, let's hope a further search for responsive records at the FBI turns up something interesting, something available for release. For those of you following the political sword rattling taking place between the White House and the FBI, it might be worth noting that the letter received in the May 10th email, says Jack Brewer, was actually contained in a PDF and was dated March 23rd. For whatever reasons, the March letter was not emailed until the day after former Director James Comey was fired. Jack Brewer adds that he mentions this because it might or might not indicate ripples of the political turbulence reaching throughout the FOIA staff and might somehow, in some manner, be involved, adding a whole new meaning to that old phrase, trickle down. Who's ready to trickle down to Brazil for a holiday with rocker Ronnie Wood of Rolling Stone? Well, we'd need a time machine to do that, but here's the headline. Ronnie Wood saw a UFO while he was on holiday in Brazil, claims ex-wife Jo Wood. Subheadline, the Rolling Stone guitarist's experience was revealed in a chat Joe had with Peter Andre. There's a new 3-part series on The Morning. It's going to be about paranormal and supernatural. We need to look into that. This article carries a byline for Tom Bryant for The Mirror out of the United Kingdom. Rolling Stone's Ronnie Wood had a close encounter with a UFO during a holiday in Brazil. The guitarist, 69, freaked out when a spaceship appeared and hovered over the sea, shining strange lights. This is according to Ronnie's ex-wife, Jo. The 62-year-old who split from the rocker in 2008 said, quote, I was in Recife in Brazil with Ronnie and our kids. Ronnie had been out wandering around, and he started shouting, Joe, come here, there's something weird over by the sea, end quotes. There's apparently more to this, and also Peter Andre, who is the host of World of Weird on This Morning ITV, Thursdays, 10:30 a.m., he apparently had a strange experience of his own in America's Nevada desert. He said, quote, what I saw was unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it. They were erratic, objects going from one point in the sky to the other in split seconds, disappearing and reappearing. It blew my mind, end quotes. And as you're probably thinking, yes, this is undoubtedly part of that star-making machinery. Earlier this week, the Rolling Stones announced a European tour with 13 shows in September and October. There'll be a link if you want to check out Peter Andre's World of Weird. We will be tossing that link into ufo-headline-news.com for your perusal. How about a trip to Michigan? A trip to the Howell Theater in Michigan in the areas of the city of Taylor and, fittingly, the city of Howell. Headline, UFO, The Otis Files, starring local talent, debuts at Howell Theater. The Howell Theater, located most fittingly in the areas of Howell and the city of Taylor, among others, is going to premiere a mockumentary. The title, UFO, The Otis Files. It's about a simple man named Otis. Played by indie horror movie veteran David C. Hayes of Howell, Otis claims to have seen an alien. This will be the first full-length feature film from the Lansing-based Muted Madness Films and the first movie script for Trico J. Lutkins of Shelby Township. Lutkins isn't new to writing, however. He's a comic book writer and one of the founding members of Source Point Press. That's one of the largest comic book publishers in the state of Michigan. Quote, at first I only intended to write a short film. After the first couple of days of filming, the director, Warren Jackson, and I just kind of looked at each other. We knew we were on to something big, so I rewrote the script. I added more parts so we could take advantage of all the talent here in Michigan, end quotes. The company says Trico has a real eye for comedy. Quote, he gets what makes people laugh, and he allows the actors room to breathe their own life and ideas into his characters, which makes his work even funnier. It's a great cast of actors, and I'm so honored to be in the film with them. They had a Kickstarter campaign that went well. You can see a trailer. We'll put up a link for that. There'll be pictures from the set and stills from the film. Very cool. Alrighty then, from the Howell Theater to Hockley, England. Hang on, we've got a lot of water to cross. It's MUFON case number 83776. The date of this sighting is the 14th of May, 2017. It was reported 2 days later. Here's the summary from the witness. Reflective sphere, metallic, silver, seen passing 747 aircraft at cruising altitude. Smooth and steady. Under the category provided that includes sighting specifics, our witness lists a viewing distance over 1 mile, the altitude over 500 feet, and there wasn't any cloud cover. The sighting duration here was 1 minute, and the object features carry the report none. The flight path, straight line path, and then a path that included directional change. This object shape, sphere. No weather report accompanies this, so we will weather that lovely British weather whatever. Here are the details of this sighting in our witness's first-person words. It was a clear, dry, sunny evening with good visibility. The temperature was plus 16 degrees Celsius. I noticed a large aircraft contrail heading toward my location at high altitude. I used binoculars to view the overflying aircraft, which was a 747. The aircraft was confirmed on radar as a Cargolux 747 freighter, and the flight number is here. Heading 160 degrees at altitude 33,000 feet. Whilst viewing this aircraft through binoculars, I noticed a metallic silver sphere-shaped object which was reflecting the sun. This object passed in the opposite direction to the 747. Its heading was approximately 360 degrees. Although the object appeared lower than the 747, I could not ascertain if it was actually beneath or higher and further away. Also, this object was small, not visible to the naked eye. The object appeared no larger than a 747 engine. This object appeared to be traveling at a much slower rate than this 747, and it was moving steadily. There were no course deviations, and there was no visible contrail, and no sound. I viewed this object for around 60 seconds before it appeared to either climb or change course in the direction of 0 to 0 degrees. At this point, with the object still in view, I decided to fetch my camera with telephoto zoom lens, but when I returned with the camera, I was unable to relocate the object, even using binoculars. My radar was showing no ADS B/mode S/MLAT. We're hoping some of you gentle listeners know what that means. There were no signals of that kind in the area other than the 747. The area in which the object was sighted lies within a main civil airspace corridor. Military traffic crosses this corridor 7 miles to the north in a west to east direction and an east-west direction, usually at 14,000 feet. My initial thought on seeing the object was that it was a spy plane or a UAV, which I soon dismissed. This object did not have wings, it did not have a tail, and it was not flat like the B-2 Spirit aircraft. The witness goes on to say that he would be interested to hear if there are any thoughts on the identification of this object. That's serious equipment. He saw it on radar. And this is the part where we should remind you that at ufostalkers.com, where we found this particular sighting, and we find many others, at the end of every entry, there's a place where you can leave your comments, ask your questions, and even post your own sighting. I'm sure this writer would love to hear anything anybody might have to offer. So, if you found yourselves in the area of Hockley, England, oh, lucky you, on the 14th of May, and you happen to have something that would pertain to this sighting, don't wait. Go over to ufostalker.com and post it. Or you can get there via a link from ufo-headline-news.com, by the way. Crossing over now to the United States, we'll go to Baldwin, Maine, up in the northernmost part on the East Coast. It's the setting for MUFON sighting number 83634. It's an older sighting. It's one of those things we think possibly triggered by some seasonal change, the anniversary. This sighting took place in 2011 on the 31st of May. It wasn't reported by our witness until the 11th of May 2017. The summary: observed bright saucer-shaped craft, flew directly over me! Sighting specifics: viewing distance 501 feet, eventually out to 1 mile. Altitude over 500 feet, no cloud cover. The sighting duration was 1 minute. The object features had a dome. The flight path was a path that included directional change, and this object had a disc shape. Apparently somebody went back and checked Baldwin, Maine's weather for that time. The maximum temperature, 84 degrees Fahrenheit, 29 degrees Celsius, dropping down to a minimum temperature of 51 degrees Fahrenheit, 11 degrees Celsius. The maximum visibility, 10 miles, 16 kilometers, dropping down to a minimum visibility, 2 miles, 3 kilometers. At this time, the conditions indicate nothing abnormal about the weather. Here's the account from 2011. I was out on my porch at my mountaintop home. It was 3:42 a.m. when I observed a bright, triple-tiered, saucer-shaped craft fly directly over me. Then it headed out over Sebago Lake, and it turned due north and sped up out of my sight line in seconds. This craft flew directly over me. It was tilted at a 45-degree angle, which allowed me to see its top tiers. The craft appeared to be 100 feet wide. It was at about 5,000 feet altitude. It made no sound at all, and was moving quite slowly and steadily at what I would guess to be about 100 miles per hour. The illumination of this thing appeared to be all internal. About 20 minutes later, a very unusual military aircraft, which I was not able to identify, flew over on the same course and direction, but this thing was flying at a much higher altitude. No evidence, no photos, too quick. Interesting, it flew out over Sebago Lake, another UFO water connection, perhaps. At cyberspeed, we will now trek from Baldwin, Maine to Ontario, California. It's MOVE-ON case number 83722. The date of this sighting, 5/7/2017. The report date, 5/14/2017. Summary, 20 to 40 feet long. Metal rectangle. Flew by. No lights. Weird. The viewing distance in this event began at 501 feet, eventually stretching out to 1 mile. The altitude was 500 feet or less. Sighting duration, 30 seconds. Object features are merely reported as other. The flight path, straight line path. Object shape, square, rectangular. Ontario, California weather. Maximum temperature 63 degrees Fahrenheit, 17 degrees Celsius. Minimum temperature 46 degrees Fahrenheit, 8 degrees Celsius. The maximum visibility 10 miles, 16 kilometers, dropping down to a minimum visibility of 4 miles, 6 kilometers, because, unbelievably, in Ontario, California, it was raining and thundering. So here's what happened. It's very short. Out in backyard, smoking a cigarette. Then it flew into view. A big, dark, flying rectangle. No lights. It looked metal, but not the kind of balloon metal or plane or even helicopter metal. I live not so far from Ontario Airport, but it was nothing from there. Because of how our backyard is situated, I saw this thing for about 30 to 45 seconds. It flew low, not very fast. There was nothing coming out of it, no sound. I told friends, and they told me about you guys. This was weird. And you came to the right place for UFO Weird, ufostalkers.com, and eventually finding its way to ufo-headline-news.com. Meanwhile, close by in Covina, California, MUFON case number 83806 took place. We're not seeing any connection except for the geolocation. There's a date difference, and oh boy, is there a description difference. Here we go. The summary. Went outside to have a smoke, looked up, saw this huge object. It looked like a Christian cross with 3 big balls on each end and over 200 windows, all shining brightly. And that's just the summary. The sighting specifics offer a viewing distance of 501 feet to 1 mile, an unknown altitude. The sighting duration was 5 minutes. The object features, windows, as we heard, the object flight path, straight line path, and the object shape, cross. At the time of this sighting, the maximum temperature in Covina, California was 73 degrees Fahrenheit, 23 degrees Celsius. The minimum temperature, 55 degrees Fahrenheit, 13 degrees Celsius. Maximum visibility was 10 miles, 16 kilometers, dropping down to a minimum of 1 mile, 2 kilometers. and California, so nothing abnormal about the weather. This report was filled out at MUFON headquarters with a witness on the phone speaking with field investigator Linda Fleckner. It's noted that this conversation took place on Wednesday, the 17th, 2017. Here's the report from our witness. I went outside to have a smoke and looked up and saw this huge object. It looked like a Christian cross with big balls on the four ends. It had over 200 windows with light shining brightly out of them. The windows were all over the craft. The large end balls were reddish in color. This object made no noise and moved very slowly over my head. It was no more than 60 miles an hour. I saw the back of it as well. It seemed to be about 2,000 feet high and 300 feet or more in size. It seemed to be heading in the direction of Ventura, west. I grew up in this house. Now my uncle owns it. I was simply visiting him. This sighting lasted 5 minutes, and I lost sight of it behind some trees. I'm a civil engineer, and I have never seen anything like this. Since I was 14, that is. When I was 14, in the same house, I saw something very similar. Incredibly intrigued we are by that. The fact that this house could be on a site that has, sightings? Oh, speaking of sightings, we've just cited the fact that all the clocks on the wall in all the time zones indicate we've got to fly because that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to Inception Radio Network. Follow today's broadcast at ufo-headline-news.com. Loving kindness, we're all in this together. This is Carol Carl. See you Monday.